News Chicago.
Cutting report on cable. Stream CBS 2 News live every day on CBS News Chicago. Stream us when you need us. CBS 2 News is always streaming on CBS News Chicago.
Committed to telling your stories. CBS 2.
The latest breaking news, first alert weather, and more streaming on CBS News Chicago.
Keeping you safer sooner. CBS 2 First Alert Weather.
Hi, everyone. Great seeing everyone today. Thanks for being here. I'd like to introduce on stage Cubs President of Baseball Operations, Jed Hoyer, new Cubs Manager, Craig Counsell, and Cubs General Manager, Carter Hawkins. With that, I'll turn it over to Jed.
Awesome. Thank you, Jason. Before I say anything else, I just want to say, early this week, Jason announced that after 18 years that he's going to step aside. He's going to pursue things with his family and his son, Max. And I just want to, take this opportunity with the media here to say thank you for everything. He's been an incredible teammate, and he will be sorely missed. So thank you, Jason. I wanted to acknowledge the Ricketts family. I see Tom and back, Laura and Todd. As always, thank you so much for your support in everything that we do. I want to thank Craig's agent, Barry Meister. I know they've been together for, I think, over 30 years. He was incredibly helpful during this process, so thank you very much. I want to acknowledge the Counsell family, Michelle, daughters, Finley and Rowan, his sons, Brady and Jack couldn't be here today, but I want to welcome you guys all to the Cubs community. I couldn't be more excited to have you guys, so thank you. From afar, I've always admired Craig. I know I'm certainly not alone in that. I've admired how he always seemed to get the most out of every team that they had. I admired the cohesiveness and the connectedness of the roster and the clubhouse every single year. I admired how his teams always seemed to play with an intensity that mirrored his own. I admired how he carries himself, how he articulates himself, how he always seems to represent the community and the organization in the best possible light possible. For all those reasons and for so many more, I could not be more excited for this ownership group and this front office to partner with Craig to bring another championship to Chicago and to these great fans. So with that, I just want to announce Craig Counsell as the 56th manager in Cubs history. All right, congratulations. Thank you.
Got it. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Feels good. Feels good. Thank you. Just first of all, thank you everybody for being here. This is a big day for me. I think it's a big day for the Cubs. It's a big day for my family, and it means a lot that you're all here and some familiar faces already. Make my heart feel good for sure. So. Look, you walk into, Wrigley today, the first day as a Cub, and it already starts to mean something. You walk into the history, you walk into the energy, you walk into a place that, you already know it demands your best. And that feeling is just a feeling that I need to have, and I love to have, and I love that to be a part of my daily life. And so that feeling exists right now is really, really special for me, and makes me so excited. It really does. It's been an emotional week, no bones about it. Much harder than I imagined. Just the speed at which this happened, and 17 years of relationships, that hits you hard. Truthfully, that hits you really hard. The Brewers have meant a lot to me. I have great relationships there. The relationships I have there are the relationships that I am going to try with all of me to build in Chicago. They're what's important about this game. The connection to the people is what makes this thing go. It's the connection to the staff. It's the connection to the players. It's the connection to the fans. And that is the challenge I have ahead of me. It's a big one. It takes time. but it's the one that I have to get right. As I've, as you go through this process, there's, when you're trying to just figure out life, really, there's self-reflection, and you're kind of trying to figure out what to do. And I think at some point over a, really a pretty long time span, I just thought that a new challenge was where I had to push myself. And really that's, it's about growth, man. It's about just trying to like push yourself to a place that you're not at right now. And that's scary. Like, I'm sitting up here, I'm a little scared. I'm sitting up here, you're a little uncomfortable. But that's how you get to a better place. And that's how you push yourself as a person to a better place, I think. And that's how you create new relationships that are just more impactful. And through this process, that has already happened. And that's another thing that just tells you this is right, man. This is the right thing going on here, and this is something that's really special. So that's been a big part of this for me. From a baseball standpoint, I think I saw quickly that like the organization is just in great health, and like that, Jed presented a very compelling vision of that. It is time to be a Cub, right? There is momentum happening here, and it feels close. And that means there's a really exciting future ahead of us. And now it's my job to be part of taking us to the next level. And that's the plan, all right? Before I take questions, there's just a couple people I'd like to thank. I'd like to thank the Ricketts family just for your commitment to my family and for welcoming my family into your family. Very much appreciate that. Jed and Carter, just your faith in my abilities, and really we're starting a partnership here, and that partnership means the world to me. It's how we get things done. It's how we connect the whole organization. And it's a big part of what happens next. My agent, Barry Meister, we joked that we've been together 30 years. We have not talked this much in the last 30 years as we talked in the last 30 days. Thank you. And then my family, my wife, Michelle, Rowan, and Finley. My boys are hopefully at class in college right now. I'm hoping. But this has been, I talked a little bit about growth. This has been a week of incredible growth for our family, and I so much appreciate how you have pushed me, supported me, just kept me going, and I've learned a lot about you, but most of all, I've felt love this week, and so I thank you for that.
Now, just please, we have microphones on either side. Just state your name and affiliation before asking your question. Go with Bruce here.
Craig, welcome.
Thank you, Bruce.
For your entire career, you've been known as a winner, and that's a heavy label to put on somebody. But I think you proved that through your career and now as a manager. Can you define what the word winner and what you look for in a player when you're looking for that particular trait?
Yeah. So, look, I think I don't know if I have the answer. That I don't know if I'm good enough to like get that right all the time. I think the biggest thing people have to do is we have to figure out, like, you got to have the courage to be yourself. And I think identifying that in people is probably the first thing. There's a selflessness to winning. That's important. There's, can you see the bigger picture? And then, the bond that in sports that teammates create is the most powerful things that sports has going. And that's a bad word, but making sure that you understand how important that word is, teammate, I think goes a long way to producing winners.
We'll do Sahad next.
Hey, Craig, Sahadev Sharma with The Athletic. You've obviously faced the Cubs a ton throughout your career. I'm curious about the 2023 team. What stood out to you when facing them, strengths, how they played in the roster in general?
Yeah, so, I mean, the 2023 Cubs team, had a good season. There's a core to that team. It's 83 wins, and that means that there's things that are close, right? What you have to be careful about is that, what happened last year does not indicate this year, and I think teams are different. I've used this analogy for a long time, but there's a soup made, and it can be the same players, but it's going to taste a little different next year when Grandma makes it. You know what I mean? And so it's always a little different, and you have to create a new dynamic every single year, no matter what's going on. And so there'll be players that have had wonderful years last year that are not so much, and vice versa. But there's a solid core and a solid foundation, and that, speaks to the health, I think, of the organization, and that speaks to a bright future.
We can do Dion next.
Hi, Craig. Dion Miller from ABC7. Obviously, Wrigley Field and the Cubs organization sells itself, but you answered a little bit, but can you expand a little more on what Jed's plan sold you on, like what the recipe looks like for making soup here?
Yeah. Hi, Dion. I think, truthfully, Jed's vision was really just of kind of, to me, the health of what we look like going forward. And this process was fast. I don't know that I've joked with Carter already that I don't know much about the Cubs. But I believed in how Jed sold the vision, absolutely. And that was impactful to me. I know enough about the city, the franchise, the history, just baseball in general, that I know how it works, and so the vision that he presented of kind of excitement and where the franchise is at, kind of in on a big picture level, we've still got to get a lot of decisions right. You got to get a lot right still, but it's a really healthy place to start.
Okay, we'll do John.
Hey, Craig. John Greenberg from The Athletic. Like you said, this went really quick. What was your reaction to them having interest in you? Because they had a manager. Like, it wasn't like this was a team you could probably have thought about or daydreamed about. So what was your kind of reaction to that? And then that first meeting with Jed, what were the conversations about?
Yeah, so, the Cubs had a manager, and that, really makes you not think about him. The process, my process, dragged on slowly, really. And then, Jed phoned me on November 1st, and we agreed to meet. And it was again, it was really Jed's vision here that sold me. It was a feeling. The meeting was, we were just feeling each other out, to be honest with you. Like, I've never really met Jed, didn't know a ton about him, just kind of the that he's the Cubs, runs the Cubs. So it was a little bit of like feeling each other out as much as anything, I guess, probably is the best way to say it. You're not really laying everything on the table in a conversation like that. You're feeling each other out. But, at some point, it was a long conversation, and honestly, Jed was aggressive in that conversation.
Matt Zahn, CBS Chicago. Craig, you touched on what makes up a winning player, but what is it about you that makes you a winning manager?
Yeah, again, I won't tell you I completely know the answer to that question, but my responsibility, I always think, is a couple things. I have to be prepared. That's first. I have to have the courage to be myself. because when you put yourself out here in these situations, like you mess up, you have flaws, you're not going to be perfect. That's okay. And then I have to connect with people, and because that brings out the best in them, and I think that's specifically players, to put them in a position to succeed and put them in the best place to succeed, mentally and as teammates. So those are the three things that I, ask of myself, and try to do, and then there's some let the chips where they fall, that you have to be okay with. So I would say those are the three things.
Andy?
Yeah, hi, Craig. Can you just give me a little more detail about just how the timeline for how things unfolded? You said you got the call on November 1st. What happened after that, and how did it go?
Yeah, Jed, I didn't pick up his call. I wasn't, that's what first happened, I guess. I called him back, and he indicated that, the Cubs had interest. We kind of discussed, some generalities of what was going on, just like my schedule and things like that. And, I suggested that because I was interested, but cautious, I guess, is probably the best way to say it. But I was interested, and so I suggested we get together that day because I had scheduled. I was going to New York the next day, and the time my process was getting pretty fast. So then we got together later that day.
Okay, we'll go Tony and Andy from Marquee, and then Maddie.
Hey, Craig. Tony Andrecki from Marquee Sports Network. I'm curious, you've managed in the playoffs a bunch. What have you learned about managing in the playoffs and how different that is to manage a 162-game season?
Yeah, it's different for sure. The 162 games is a marathon, and our game, I think, is rewarded, and decisions you make are rewarded kind of over the marathon. And players, frankly, are rewarded over the marathon. In short playoff series, we have luck in our game, and we have just fortune in our game, and we have you don't control everything in really short stints in this. You control less in really short stints in this game. So it causes, or it forces, aggressiveness on managers, I think. And I think the best thing that you just have, the mindset you have to take into playoffs is one of aggressiveness. And you still have to trust your players, and you still have to go with, you have to be willing to trust your players and trust your great players, but with an aggressive mindset.
Hey, Craig. Andy Martinez from Marquee Sports Network. I'm curious if you've reached out to any of the current players yet, or have you had any initial conversations with them?
Yeah, I really slowly started this, and frankly need to pick up the pace. But because this has been fast for me, I need to go slow right now just to make sure I get things right. And so that will pick up here as we go. But it's important to me that those are important conversations, and I want to make sure I get them right. And those introductions are important. There's a coaching staff that we've got to make decisions on. Those are important decisions. But at this point, it's just, for me right now, it's important to go a little bit slower.
We'll go Maddie Lee.
Hi, Craig. Maddie Lee from the Sun-Times. You mentioned Jed really sold you on the vision, but going into this process, what were the top things that you wanted checked off that were going to affect your decision in the long run?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why I talk about a little bit like the health of the organization. So just understanding, you know, where Jed thought the Cubs were at in certain areas. You know, it's like the current team, player development, kind of how is the front office built out to equip us and give us good information and make great decisions. And then certainly like financially, where do you feel like where's the space to grow or to continue to, you know, invest in the team. So I think those 4 areas, and I try to keep it. I really think it's my job to see that from a little bigger level and not get super granular there. And you know, you were always kind of doing this to me, I was always doing this as a manager with organizations and with teams and looking at them. And I was, you know, I thought that the Cubs were in a really good spot. They've obviously had to make some difficult decisions kind of in years past. And that's what's led them to a pretty good place. So it kind of just my conversation with Jed strengthened that belief.
Go Steve Greenberg.
Hi, Craig. Steve Greenberg from the Sun-Times.
Steve.
I've heard, I guess, skepticism, let's say, is in recent years about the impact of a big league manager, you know, how significant it really is, maybe relative to certain other sports, certainly relative to the way it used to be in baseball. So how do you view, you know, the influence, the impact a manager can have, you know, in the most basic way, in the standings? How much of a difference can you make?
Yeah, look, I don't think it's very difficult to quantify, and I think that's why there's been a hard time with it, and understandably so. I think what I've found is that, you know, when I talk about connection, like that's a big word with players, and that's a big word with like uniform staff, obviously, but it's also a big word with what are now much bigger organizations and, you know, people supporting baseball, the team, and that connection and that partnership is really important. And that's how I think that's another way that a manager can really affect what's going on. So we all see the game out there and the results of the game out there, and there's a win and a loss, and we move on. I think there's things happening around that add up over the course of the season, and the manager in today's game, to me, you know, plays a role connecting both of those parties, and if you can do it well, I think there's a place to have a real impact.
Oh, Mike Berman.
Hey, Craig. Mike Berman from NBC here in Chicago. I don't know what your relationship's like with David Ross, but undoubtedly you cross paths as players and as managers. What are the emotions like getting this job in the manner that it happened, and has there been any contact with David since?
Yeah, I mean, look, David is a very good man. You know, David texted me probably before the news broke here. And I called him back immediately. We had what I think is a very good conversation that gave me, I've always had great respect for David, that gave me the ultimate respect for David, the way he handled the conversation. So this is you know, part of this business is really difficult and it's really cutthroat. And as a player, I've lived it, David's lived it. Every player lives it every day, but I respect the heck out of David Ross.
We'll go Matt Spiegel in the center.
Hey, Craig, Matt Spiegel from 670 The Score. Jed was talking the other day about his excitement of how you view the chair of managers, so in terms of the partnership. Wondering what realms of what they do you're excited to bring what you've learned through the years, whether it's bullpen or whether it's strategic or scouting? What realms are you excited to bring your knowledge to?
Yeah, so it's an interesting question. I think, I've been with one organization, and I have kind of experience into how one organization, puts it together and builds a roster. I'm like barely into another organization, but it's different, right? And it's different. And so, certainly one of my hopes is that I can provide some, new thoughts and new ideas about how to just improve a process possibly, or a new way to just think about how we manage the roster during the season. And those are little things, but I do believe that, I've had this philosophy, just like stack little good decisions on top of each other. Just keep stacking a good decision on top of each other. And then you wake up one day and you're sitting in a pretty good place. And all those good decisions have kind of formed a backbone of your organization. And you're sitting in a very, very strong place. So getting the little things right and those little decisions right, and just keep getting that next decision right. Keep getting that next decision right. That's where it adds up over time. And that's when you wake up one day and your organization's in an incredibly strong place.
Do Megan.
Hey, Craig. Megan Monmere with the Chicago Tribune. When you look at the mark of successful organizations year over year, you look at player development and being able to integrate that at the major league level. What do you view kind of your role as a manager in that, and what do you feel like are some of the keys to be able to build those successful years?
Yeah, thanks, Megan. I think certainly the biggest thing is that the major leagues it's a hard league, and it's just player development does not stop when it gets to the big leagues. And I think that's often the hardest thing to learn. And after you go through cycles of players, you start to learn how hard the transition is to the major leagues for players. The norm is a massive struggle. That's the norm. And I think if you come at it from that place, the problem is that expectations for those players are on the other side of the spectrum. And that's a hard thing for everybody to balance, right? It's a hard thing for the manager trying to win a game to balance. It's a hard thing for the fans to balance. It's a hard thing for all the player development staff that have worked so hard to help get a player. And then most of all, it's hard for the player. That's the hardest thing for the player. So I think trying to create some empathy there with that and some understanding with that for the players and just for the group, all of us, is probably the most important thing to do. And the goal of that is to just so that the player gets in a better place and the player doesn't have so much on his chest kind of coming to the park every day and knowing he has to do everything for everybody, because that's what he feels like. And so it's a process for those players. And I think it's essentially one of time and support to get them to a good place.
Sully?
Hey, Craig, Paul Sullivan, Chicago Tribune. Just the money, highest paid manager in baseball. Does that put more pressure on you to win immediately and win big, or do you feel like it's just part of the gig that you were in the right place at the right time?
Well, there's pressure in this job, man. I mean, there should be, and I accept that and welcome it, and I think it should be there. So I don't think, regardless of what's going on salary-wise, look, there's a financial component to this. Obviously, there is, but my job's to win baseball games, no matter what, and I wish. I wish. Unfortunately, your competitiveness does not allow you to just behave differently. You just can't. That's just what you do. You go in a dugout, and your job is to win a baseball game. Doesn't matter who your team is. That's kind of how I see what I do. Doesn't matter what's around you, but once the game starts, your job is to win a baseball game. And you keep it that simple. There's no reason to get past that. And I think if you start complicating it, you get yourself into trouble.
Hey, Craig. Kurt Hogue, Milwaukee Journal Sentinel here. Just curious, as someone who spent so much time in Milwaukee, 17 years as a player, and then from there before that, just wondering, like, as you're going throughout this process, was there a mental hurdle at all of, like, considering going to the other side now? How did you sort of view that?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really see it like that. I maybe underestimated that part of it, frankly. I was looking at it maybe as from a challenge perspective, from a growth perspective. I understand that point of it. Certainly respect that point of it. But I guess that's where tough decisions you end up with tough decisions because of things like that, and it's always those life decisions like this are certainly challenging. But after you go through your process internally and with your family of making decisions, you end up in the right side.
Jesse.
Hey, Craig. The way the system is set up is I wonder if Milwaukee had more resources, you'd still be there. Like, was that part of it, coming to a place that just simply has more resources because of the market they're in?
Yeah, I mean, look, the challenge of this is different, and that challenge excites me. More resources means like different types of players, for sure. That's a different challenge for a manager. So I don't know if there's I think more resources is certainly something Chicago offers, and there's no question about that. It's part of the equation. It's part of, I think how you kind of tackle the problem of being a great baseball team and being a great franchise. There are also other things that excite you, like this place, is just, you can't help but get excited about it. The brand that the Chicago Cubs are, like, you can't help but get excited about representing that. So, I think that it's just more than, to say it's payroll is just, that's probably simplifying a little bit on my end.
We'll go back corner.
Hi, Craig. Adam McCalvey, MLB.com.
Hi, Adam.
You went into this year in a unique spot for a manager with a total blank slate with different options, including maybe taking a break. Can you tell us how your thinking just on the big picture evolved over the course of a year? And at what point, if you can think in the timeline, you decided, yeah, I definitely want to manage and I'm open to managing in a different place?
Yeah, I mean, I've probably had for your latter question, like those thoughts over the last 2 years. I've thought about it, thought about what's next, thought about a new challenge, how this year evolved. I think my thinking has always been like, look, you make, and I think Jed would tell you the same thing, like, give yourself time to make decisions. And so I chose the path that I just wanted to give myself as much time to see where life had me. Where's life going to you're sitting there in April or March in spring training, and you're in one place in life, and in October, and you're in a different place in life. And I wanted to give myself time to be in that place, to kind of see what was in front of me, see what was going on with my family, and give myself time to make a decision that I thought was best for all of us.
Steve Greenberg.
When people give the kind of thumbnail of your resume, your postseason record comes up, right? Haven't gotten to the World Series as a manager or won it. The reason I want to ask this is because you went into the job not having coached or managed before, especially early. Did you feel like any of that was on you, that it was maybe different than what you expected, or that you didn't do something well enough? And over the course of your years, the time you got in Milwaukee, how much better did you get?
At the postseason?
Well, the better part, I mean, overall.
Oh, okay. So I think, look, it's interesting. Managing is, I think the first thing you learn, and what I've always said is like the courage to be yourself is the first thing you learn about managing. It's really the first thing you need to learn about it. It's not the strategy of the game. It's, you know, it's not when to take the starter out. It's, you know, do you have the courage to be yourself throughout this process? It's what you learn first. And I think, you know, there's sometimes early in your careers, there's a fearlessness to how you do things, which is a good thing, right? You know, young, crazy, you know, there's that fearlessness that we all used to have. Some of you still have, hopefully. But that, you know, and then as you get older, you experience and like kind of reps of events in managing, whether that be conversations with players, whether that be game situations, whether that be front office interactions, then they start to guide you a little bit more, because those reps, those kind of, you know, that really help you form kind of gut decisions are really important to you. So that's how I think you improve. And so you try to have this blend of like, don't lose that fearlessness, but your gut is better because of all those reps that you've had. And hopefully that's what I think makes you a little better at the job and keeps you growing. And then the other thing is like, this is why I'm here, because you have to challenge yourself to get to the next place. I believe that you have to create a challenge for yourself to get to the next place. And that's part of this for me, is like to get better.
We'll go Jordan Bastian, then Ryan Herrera, then Cheryl Ray, and then we'll wrap up.
Hey, Craig. Jordan Bastian, MLB.com. What facet of the vision kind of most excited you, whether it was the integration of young players into the big leagues, whether it's the potential for big off seasons, kind of what part of the vision were you most excited about?
Yeah, I think there's a lot. So there's a lot of choices of how to do it. And that's exciting. There's several ways to attack the problem. It offers the ability for Jed to be very creative and use any one of those means to do so. And in the end, it's going to be some blend of all that gets it done. But it's almost like he's got a lot of ways to do that. And I think that gives him a really good chance at being right at this and this being successful.
We'll go Ryan, then we'll wrap with Cheryl Ray.
Hi, Craig. Ryan Herrera, CHGO. You mentioned having not really known Jed prior to you meeting, and Jed has mentioned being like appreciating you from afar. Now that you guys have met and have obviously signed here now, what excites you about that partnership going forward with Jed and Carter, and how you are now involved in executing that plan?
Yeah, look, it's always, you know, there's what's fun about this is that there's like a workplace dynamic, right? And you start to learn personalities, and you start to learn how to communicate with each other and how to get things done, how to push a button sometimes, right? Like, because that's what you need to do. And so, yeah, I've got my early read on that kind of like in my head, and that's helpful, man. That's how we're going to communicate together, and that's how we make progress, and that's how, like, I push Jed and he pushes me and Carter pushes me, and so that's the fun part about this, kind of getting to know each other, feel each other out, test each other. That's awesome, man. I love that part of it. And because in these early conversations, you learn so much, and you learn so much about each other, and you find places where you can make each other better, and I think that's a big part about, I think, what Jed would tell you about what this partnership is about, is how we can make each other better, and it's a part you look forward to.
Cheryl Ray Stout with WBEZ Radio.
You touched a little bit about the coaching staff, but have you talked to any of the present coaches on the Cubs staff? And could you announce any retention of these coaches or somebody from the Brewers too?
No, at this point, I'm still working through that process, and I think, like I said, I'd reiterate, it's a place that I want to go slow at right now. It's a place I want to be deliberate because it's important, and I just need to do more homework is the best way to say it. I hadn't done homework on the Cubs. I wasn't prepared. So it's a place where I'm behind. and I think making a quicker decision is a mistake in this situation.
Great. Thanks, Craig. Thanks, everyone. We can break out into small groups. We'll do Chicago Writers over here, TV, radio in the back, and then the Milwaukee media, if you want to form a group, we'll get Craig and whoever else you'd like. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.